Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming. Welcome to Let's Do Lunch. Today, we are doing a little bit of a leftovers makeover, and the star of the show are pickled red onions. So we will be making these pickled red onions, which are my favorite way to make a boring meal more exciting. And so we have to bring this brine to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Measure first, talk second today. So the first thing that we're going to need is a measuring cup, and we're going to measure 1 cup of vinegar. Now, this is just a plain old distilled white vinegar, nothing fancy, 1 cup. And I've experimented with these onions with doing cider vinegar or red wine vinegar, and I don't like the flavor as much as just plain old distilled white vinegar. Feel free to experiment and let me know what you like if you like something different. So this is just a regular old saucepan, and I am pouring 1 cup of distilled white vinegar into the saucepan. This recipe is kind of fun because it's just 1, 1, 1, 1. It's one of everything. You don't have to remember a lot of measurements. You do have to remember what unit goes with what ingredient. So I've got 1 cup of vinegar. Now I'm going to get 1 cup of plain old water. And into my vinegar and water saucepan, I'm going to measure 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of sugar. This is to make a brine. So yes, it is very salty and very sugary. We are not eating all of this brine, certainly not in one sitting. So 1 teaspoon of salt. And you know I love to keep it real. So I will tell you, I do not know where my tablespoon measurer is, but fortunately, I know that 3 teaspoons equals 1 tablespoon. So 1 tablespoon of sugar. And I'll go a little bit more into the nutrition with this in a minute once I get it going, so that you're not alarmed about all this sugar and salt. We're really not really eating it. All right, so I've got my 4 ingredients in here: salt, sugar, water, and vinegar, and it's going on the stove. I need this to boil quickly because we only have 15 minutes. So I'm turning the stove all the way up, and I'm going to put a lid on it to trap the heat in. The lid is going to both trap the heat and prevent my kitchen from stinking up like vinegar. So you don't have a kitchen that smells like stinky feet while we're making these. All right, so that's the brine. And the reason it has so much sugar and salt in it is because the sugar and salt are going to work with the onion. They're going to break down the cell walls of the onion and allow those flavors to really get out of the cell walls, so it can bring a lot more flavor to our pickled onions. It also makes them a little bit softer and a little bit more delicious. So that is the reason there's so much salt and sugar. We are not going to be, drinking cups of it, so you're really not getting that much salt and sugar when you're actually eating these onions. So the next thing that we need is some sort of jar to do these onions in. And this is a mason jar. Any sort of heat-safe vessel is going to work really well for these. So don't do them in an old jam jar. Don't do them in an old salsa jar, because you will run the risk of the glass breaking, because we're going to pour some hot liquid into this. So into this jar, we're going to put 3 ingredients. The first one we're going to do is 1 garlic clove. Like I said, 1, 1, 1. 1 garlic clove. I'm just going to smash it with the heel of my hand. That's going to help it to, it's not a very fresh one. All right, it's going to help it to pop out of its skin. And so then I'll just kind of peel the skin away. And so you can see I just have a nice little smashed clove of garlic. It's going straight into the bottom of this nice heat-safe jar. The next thing I'm going to do is 1 teaspoon of peppercorns. So this is just the pepper grinder you buy from the supermarket. And did you know they unscrew the lids so you can steal the peppercorns out for other uses? So we're measuring 1 tablespoon of peppercorns. 1 teaspoon of peppercorns. And those are going in my jar on top of my garlic clove. All right. So the next thing we have to do is slice up our onion. So onions, when you pickle them, they're the most delicious if you can get them sliced as thinly as possible. We're going to do our best, but even if we can't get them perfectly thin, it will still be a delicious topping for whatever we're eating. So you want to have your knife as sharp as possible. Do as I say, not as I do. This knife is not very sharp, But the main reason that you want a sharp knife is for your own safety so that you do not cut your finger off. And it also can help you to get a little bit more precise and a little bit thinner. So for this onion, you can see it's got two ends. It's got the root end and the stem end. I'm going to go ahead and start by slicing both of those off. And that's one of the most dangerous parts, if you can get that done. So we're going to peel this first layer of onion skin off. Maybe we'll lose a little bit of the onion too. So now, in order to get this onion sliced as thin as possible, I get all the skin off first. All right, to get this onion sliced as thin as possible, I'm going to do it into half circles. So for the most safety, you want to have a flat surface on your vegetable when you're chopping it. So you can see there's a little bit of a flat surface where I just sliced off the end there. I'm going to put the flat side down on the cutting board and slice it again from where I cut it, just in half there. So now you can see all the layers are going this direction. And now we want to take this flat side and put it flat down on the cutting board so it doesn't rock when you're slicing it. If you put it on the curved edge, it's going to go all over the place while you're dealing with your sharp knife. So having the flat side down makes it a little bit safer, but it also makes it a little bit easier to get those really thin slices that are good for pickled onions. So you can see I'm leaving the tip of my knife down on the cutting board, keeping those fingers out of the way so I don't cut my finger in front of all you people. And I'm aiming for about a little less than 1/4 inch thick for these. I think I could probably get it thinner if my knife was sharper. If anybody knows a good knife sharpener around Montpelier area, all right, the end's going to be kind of thick. And I'm just going to do the same thing with the other side, slicing as thinly as possible. And then we are going to kind of break these up a little bit. So we want to increase the surface area. You can see that they kind of hold their shape when you slice them. We're going to break them up and put them into our jar. Now, if you don't have a good heat-safe jar, you can also do these in a bowl. But the jar is nice because it helps you kind of pack them in there nice and tight. Because if they are packed in tight, they don't float as much. So we're pouring a hot brine over them. So that means that we want them to stay under this hot brine so that they can pickle. If they float to the surface, they're not going to pickle as well. So if you are going to do them into a bowl, you might want to find a smaller bowl so that you can weigh them down a little bit. So we'll see if I can fit this whole onion in this jar. Might have a little bit left over. I don't know, I'm looking pretty good. Just putting it all the way in. So the reason that we're boiling this brine behind me is because when we pour the hot brine over the onions, it's going to make them soften up a little bit. It's going to help that sugar and salt get into them. But heating the brine also helps the sugar and salt dissolve. A lot of food science going on today. Okay, so you can see that these are packed down pretty tight. That's going to help them to not pop up when I pour this brine over. So let's see how it's doing. Are we boiling? Very close. We're almost boiling. Pretty good on timing. All right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pour this hot brine over. And what I want to do is make sure that my onions are somewhere that I can leave them for a good long while, because they do need to cool down. So I'm going to do them onto a towel because we're probably going to drip some brine. So I think you can see this. I'm just going to put them right here where they will remain for the next hour or two. And we're going to pour our brine over and we're also going to note that we're probably not going to use all the brine. It's really quite annoying to be pickling these and not have enough. So it's always good to make a little bit more brine than you think you will need. All right, so we're boiling here. And I'm going to take it off the stove and I'm just going to let it, swirl it around a little bit and let it air for about 30 seconds, just so I'm not pouring absolutely boiling things into my jar. Just, 30 seconds off the boil or so. So we've got our onions, and the bottom is our pepper and our garlic. The reason we put those on the bottom is so they don't float up and they can stay under the brine and do a nice job flavoring our onions. So now is the fun part. We're going to pour our hot brine over our onions. A little dicey, it's probably going to make a mess, which is why I have that towel under there. And you can see I still have a pretty good amount of brine left over. I'm I don't really know a good use for it. Looks like I could maybe pickle another vegetable in it if I wanted to. Just gonna set it aside for now. All right, so you can see even though I packed these onions in, they are floating up a little bit. So I might want to use something smaller. In this case, I have a smaller jar to just weigh them down a little bit. And now they have to wait for about an hour or two until they're totally cool. You want to make sure that they're totally cool before you stick them in the oven. I mean, not the oven, in the refrigerator, because it will increase the chance of your glass cracking if you just were to put this hot jar in the refrigerator right now. You don't want to come back to broken glass and a lot of liquid in your fridge. So make sure that you cool it all the way down. So once it's cool, you can eat them. They are more delicious if they spend the night in the refrigerator. Just gives the flavors a little bit more time to meld. But if you want them that same day, you can absolutely do that. So you might be wondering, why did we just make onions for our lunch? Aren't we here to make something to eat for lunch? I'm not going to eat a pile of onions for lunch. And that is where the bowl formula comes in. So I think I still have time to do this. So the thing about these onions is they're really delicious and they're a great way to perk up things that might otherwise be boring. So if you are faced with eating for lunch a bowl of rice and beans or going out to lunch, you know the rice and beans is probably a healthier choice. It's probably better for your budget. It's probably better for your nutrition goals, but it's just not that exciting. It's just kind of boring. So these pickled onions are a good way to make something exciting and make you want to eat a healthier choice. So while they in themselves don't have a ton of food groups or a ton of balance, they can help enable you to eat something that has a lot more balance. So what I'm doing with them today is I'm going to put them into a grain bowl. So we'll do that next. We'll assemble our bowl in our last 3 minutes. There is going to be a bowl formula that I will share with you after we're done here. But basically there's 5 components. So we're going to start on the bottom of our bowl, and this is a leftovers makeover. So I did know I was giving this presentation today, so I was prepared with my leftovers. But if you don't have all these things, you can certainly swap them out for things that are a little bit more convenient. So for the bottom of our bowl here, I'm going to do a little bit of quinoa, just leftovers from dinner last night. So when you're doing your base, you might want to choose something that's got a good source of fiber. So our base is the starch. So that might be rice, it might be quinoa, it might be farro, it might be cubed up potatoes or sweet potatoes. We're just going to kind of cover the bottom of our bowl with our grain or our starch, whatever we want to choose. The next step is to put on some veggies. So to maximize the nutrition, to maximize your benefit, you're going to aim for 2 cups and 2 colors of veggies. So this is leftover roasted veggies. It's got some peppers, some zucchini and squash, and the last 4 Brussels sprouts that I roasted last night. So this is probably about 1 cup of veggies. I'm going to dump this on. That's my first veggie. My second veggie is going to be lettuce. And since I want to heat this up, I'm going to add the lettuce at the end. So I've got this lettuce here that I'll throw on the top after I'm done here, but this is going to go in the microwave and I don't want to microwave lettuce. All right, so I've got my veggies, I've got my grain. The next thing I'm going to do is a protein. And I just conveniently happen to have some chicken thighs left over. But if you don't have them left over, you could do like a can of tuna fish or maybe fry up an egg or 2. Those are some faster proteins. If you don't have roasted veggies, you can also do raw veggies. You can also just bump up the lettuce. And I also really like using cauliflower rice in these bowls, along with whatever starch I'm having, because that just makes it nice and fluffy. So I've got a chicken thigh on there. And then the next things that we're going to do are more exciting flavors. So we're going to do a sauce, and we're going to do a cheese, and we're going to do a crunch on this one. So for my sauce, I actually made some pickled red onions a couple of days ago, so you can see the difference. The ones that we have here have been marinating for what, like 5 minutes or so. These ones have been in the fridge for 2 or 3 days, and you can see they have this really nice pink color on them, and they are really delicious. So not only am I going to be using these onions today, I'm also going to use a little bit of the brine as my sauce. This is basically like the easiest salad dressing in the world. It's 1 part of onion brine and 1 part of olive oil. So You can do like maybe a tablespoon of each and use that essentially as a salad dressing. You might be worried about the sugar and the salt in the brine, but I actually calculated it out, and 1 tablespoon of this brine has less than 75 milligrams of salt and less than 1 gram of sugar. So it's actually less than you'll see for some of those commercial bottled salad dressings. And then I'll just do a small drizzle of olive oil over there for some healthy fat. And then for my cheese, I'm going to crumble a little bit of feta over the top to give it a little bit of more brightness. And for my crunch, I actually have 2 crunches today. I'm gonna do a couple of these pumpkin seeds. I like them because they're crunchy, but they're also a great source of magnesium, which is great. And then finally, the crown jewel is our pickled onions that we have just made. So this bowl I don't think is actually boring, but if it was boring, these onions would really spice it up. So I'm gonna do a couple forkfuls of these onions. You can see they're really gorgeous and really pretty pink. They are not very, they're pretty when they're first made, but they are really gorgeous once they've been sitting in the oven. I mean, not the oven, the refrigerator for a couple days. So yes, we can eat our leftovers. Yes, we can repurpose them. And it's always very exciting to create something as a garnish that's going to make them more exciting. So there's our bowl. And I thank you also.